Hello, David. I haven't seen you for a long time.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen you either, Michael.
Well,
Hello.
trying to keep low and just play as much golf as I can.
Yeah.
Connie sees me frequently.
Good evening, everybody.
Hey, Jason.
How we
Good
doing?
evening.
Nice background, Jason.
Oh yeah, I figure we got to show something.
Oh, he's got the
with
barn
parts,
going.
right?
Yeah, he's got the barn.
Yeah. It's a happening place right now, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Hi, Mary. You're on mute. You're on mute still.
The phrase of 2020, 2021. You are muted. Hi, Fred. Welcome back.
Thank you.
So everyone's here except for youth council and our council liaison.
Yeah, nice work, Parks Board. Perfect attendance.
Yeah.
Hi, Sylvia. Hey, Nikki, I'll call at 5:30, but did we have anyone for public comment tonight?
No public comments were received.
Okay, perfect. Then I know what to do there then.
I'm so impressed with all these backgrounds. I think I'm going to get me a picture of the Seattle Seahawks and put myself in the center with the helmet on. Huh?
Great.
How would that work?
We're gonna hold you to that, Michael.
Yeah.
Sylvia, that's very pretty.
Awesome. Well, I've got 5:30 now, so we can call this meeting to order. And as mentioned, we've got perfect attendance. And so we can roll on to the approval of our March minutes. If anyone's had opportunity to read that, I would entertain a motion.
I so move.
Okay, Michael with the first.
I'll
Anyone wanna-
second.
Vito with a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we will roll on. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, unanimous approval continues, people. Nice work, board. And we are with Dave tonight, and he's going to give us an update under new business for the city plan, dealing with energy and climate. So I was happy to see that on the agenda tonight. So welcome, Dave, and thanks for being
Thank
here.
you. Nikki, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now. We'll see if this works.
Okay, let me know if you need me to back you up.
Can you see that okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, good. It worked. Okay, this is the first slide, and it's just an introductory slide to talk about the comprehensive plan and energy climate change chapter to our comprehensive plan. Again, just introductory. It has a couple of slides. It talks about a little bit about Fort Silicon Park with a picture and an umbrella used to protect the earth from too much sun. So why are we doing this? Now, there's a bunch of reasons. We received a $20,000 grant from the Department of Commerce to see if we would be interested in doing this. I don't think they really really comprehended how each of these, I think there were roughly 5 cities and a couple of counties involved in this process, how this would come out. But the reports are all due by the end of June. Number two, we have a current comprehensive plan sustainability chapter, which is out of date. And originally this was written so that Puget Sound Regional Council would certify our comprehensive plan. So it was done fairly rapidly and to meet minimum requirements. Three, this is coming to be more and more of an issue. At some point, the city is going to have to be required to do this. So let's get out in front. And I think we are out in front at the moment. Four, it's going to assist the city with future grant requests, not only potentially in public works, in planning, but also in the parks department. So it's nice that we start thinking about that. And the fifth one, even if you don't agree with climate change, there's nothing wrong with preserving and protecting the environment. And much of what this presentation talks about and what's in the plan does those things. So what's in the chapter? We have an introduction, its purpose. What is climate change? We talk about renewable energy today, and it's interesting that before the pandemic, the level of increase in renewable energy was roughly 3% per year. And much of that was coming about much faster than anticipated because a lot of new infrastructure was coming online. And so that was of importance with energy companies. We list potential impacts to Lakewood. They're very general and broad because it's difficult to define always. There are advantages and disadvantages to doing this. And so we talked about that. We also mentioned the impact of COVID-19, where at the very beginning it had a substantial reduction in number of vehicles. But since then, I would say that the number of vehicles have actually gone up or is equal to what it was prior to COVID. For the first time, Lakewood attempted to estimate greenhouse gas emissions, which this turned out to be a difficult assignment, much more difficult than anticipated. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. And then there are some greenhouse gas emissions reduction standards in the revised Code of Washington. And we talked a little bit about that. The next topic was Lakewood energy and reuse. And this ended up being also a difficult assignment because we have 3 different energy companies with 3 different boundaries. Some of the boundaries are in question because 2 agencies compete with one another. And so we tried to determine fuel mix from those 3 agencies for the city of Lakewood. Now, this would be a lot easier if Lakewood was a full service city and we had our own power company, but we don't. And so this ended up being a very frustrating task. The document ends with findings and recommendations, and then energy and climate change goals, policies, and actions. And on this last bullet, I would like to just mention that we came up with 89 actionable items to give to the Planning Commission, which is way too much, but not knowing exactly where the community was on climate change, it was more of a potpourri approach. And since then, the Planning Commission has been asked to go back and take a look at all of these and tell us what their top 10 would be. They had a homework assignment. We've asked that we review their homework at their next meeting, which would be, I believe, May 5th. Some climate change impacts to Lakewood. We're going to see probably more peak frequent storm events. Potential increase in water levels on Chambers Creek, which could cause the dam to eventually lead to overtopping during high tides. A little concern with steep slopes such as Chambers Creek Canyon with heavy rainfall events could lead to increased landslides. Many people are not aware of this, but many of the development projects that were approved by Pierce County prior to incorporation required significant engineering tech reports because there was some concern that some of the development was getting too close to the interior of the Creek Canyon. Something that people have not seen or have witnessed very often is increased flood risk in the Clover Creek watershed. Rising floodwaters could impact I-5 between Highway 512 and Bridgeport Way. Part of this is climate change. Part of this is because of the peak storm events. But the other issue that people have forgotten is that the Clover Creek Channel is not where it's supposed to be. The current channel is man-made. It was done so at the very beginning of the 20th century. So the water, when it comes out of JBLM or McCord, wants to go where the original line or the original creek channel flowed. And that's part of the problem. This one, additional pollutant loading from peak storm events and higher summer temperatures will make existing water quality issues in the city's numerous lakes and streams worse. And I think as a result of this, you're going to see the application of more chemicals. I have some concern that some of the lakes districts may have difficulties paying for that in the future, which means that they're going to come to the city and ask for assistance. I see that as an upcoming request in future years as far as trying to maintain algae bloom. This has not happened yet, but it's something that we're watching. Potential for fires in the park and open space areas behind Western State Hospital, JBL lands adjacent to the city, and vacant lands within the I-5 and Highway 512 corridors. I have contacted the fire district to ask for statistics on any increase in the number of events from wildfires or vacant lands. They haven't seen it yet, but I am making mention in this report. And the general loss of vegetation and impacts to air quality are at risk. To some degree, we try to control that with some of our regulations in Title 18A, particularly with tree preservation. But we do find situations where people cut down a significant number of trees. We fine people heavily. There's a case before the court right now where trees were removed on Gravity Lake Drive where the fines total in excess of $30,000. In some cases, the fines have been as high as $90,000. And in one particular case, one person cut down a tree they weren't supposed to, and that tree cost them $25,000. So it's something that we try to avoid, the fines and the like, but I do want to make mention of it. When we do also collect some funds, we go and have a street mitigation, or not street, but tree mitigation fund that's outlined in 18A. And Mary from time to time uses that fund to help plant trees and other landscaping. So right now there's excess money in that fund account, and I'm waiting for Mary to make a request. So hint, hint. Some advantages that we have a mild climate. We have a large access to hydroelectric power, which is different than most communities elsewhere in the country. I don't think the infill potential has been realized. I know that we're doing a lot with transportation grants to improve walkability. We've done some significant revisions to our land use regulations. We have one sub-area plan approved and a second one before the City Council for action on May 3rd. We have a non-motorized transportation plan, but it needs to be updated that we can't seem to get to. We have a complete streets policy. We promote energy conservation. We do tree preservation. We have floodplain protections. And we have a significant number of shoreline master program policies that if lake owners would follow, it could potentially reduce the amount of algae in the lakes. Challenges. We're a relatively new city, and by that, what I'm trying to say is climate change hasn't been a major issue because we've had other more significant ones. I want to say that, how do I say this? We have budget challenges on a regular basis. And for example, Puyallup has a significantly larger general fund budget, even though it's smaller than Lakewood. And so that is a continuing challenge where climate change hasn't been a priority. We have an older housing stock where a lot of the existing HVAC systems, et cetera, are old and need to be replaced, but the cost for doing that work is substantially rising. Another challenge is our location. We're a city of commuters, and we have a very high vehicle miles count, VMT, vehicle miles traveled in Lakewood. We don't have a real street network except for small neighborhood areas. We do lack street infrastructure, but we're getting better. Going back to transportation, we have no BRT and limited Sound Transit commuter rail service. Some of our underlying land use patterns are challenging, and then I mentioned this once before, but it's worthy of mention a second time. We are not a full service city. So,
Dave, what's a BRT?
bus rapid transit. That would be a direct line from downtown Tacoma to, for example, the Lakewood Town Center. So we decided that, hey, let's take a look at greenhouse gas emissions and find out what we are emitting. And this turned out to be a huge challenge. So we joined ICLEA and its local governments for sustainability. We purchased their software system and we began collecting data on Lakewood to determine our greenhouse gas emissions. Well, because we're not a full service city, we don't own any utilities, this turned out to be a very difficult assignment. And so we fell behind. And so the next thing was, well, what else could we do? We could take some older reports back from 2015 and try to create data from those 2015 reports specific to Lakewood. I looked at the numbers and I really wasn't satisfied. So I started doing some research and I found out that Google, beginning in 2018, started doing greenhouse gas emissions testing for a limited number of California cities. I believe they started out in Palo Alto and Mountain Grove, or not Mountain Home, in that area on the East Bay. And some of the reports are quite interesting. And so I decided, hey, let me contact Google and see if they would go ahead and give us information. And yes, it's free of charge. And I had no idea what they would do. And so all you have to do is say you're a government official, give them your email address and what you do for that government, and they put you on a list. And then they never tell you what they do. So I thought they just stopped because they've been focusing more on California cities, and I didn't think they would look at Washington State because we're more unique in some aspects with climate change because of our high propensity for hydroelectricity already. About 2.5, 3 months ago, I found out that they did the analysis, and I was shocked. So it's good for Lakewood, and anyone can do this. For Jason, if Federal Way wanted to do it, it would be quite simple. So anyway, I got Dr. Spock involved. And so we have a quick slide here. I'm trying to be funny. So we did greenhouse gas emissions. And so what does it look like? Well, here you go. You can't see it on my slide, but it does show you the amounts of pounds of greenhouse gas emissions for buildings and transportation in the city of Lakewood. That's on the far left. And then they did this really interesting thing. They said that if you started installing solar rooftop panels, you could reduce your emissions by 223,000 pounds per year. And so I'm going, oh yeah, well, let's see what this looks like. We'll get to that in a minute. But they also did something different, which I was not expecting. This slide shows you the number of in-boundary trips in the city of Lakewood for the year 2019, 32,200,000 trips. I also have other information on outbound and other data. I'm not sharing it this evening. But then they also tell you that you generate about 35,500 tons of carbon gas emissions from inbound trips. So this is brand new technology. Google is using a lot of big data, and they're also using machine learning. So this is a future look at what planning will be in 5 to 10 years. It just won't be Google doing this. It will be doing others. So big data is just on the horizon when you start talking with municipalities and the like. And Google is ahead of everyone.
David, are those the entry points in which they've measured, or is that just a graphic to
It's just a graphic.
okay.
There are 3 points. There's outbound and inbound, and then in boundary. I only shared the in boundary with you tonight
That's cool.
because I'm trying to make this a short presentation, not get into all the detail unless you're interested. But this is just to give you a wedding, if you will, of what's available. Now, the next slide is even more interesting. This shows the city of Lakewood, we have 57 solar arrays. That's it. And that is less than 1% of the total potential. And this graphic doesn't show it very well, but the darker the color, the more shade. The lighter the color, the less shade. And so you'll see that the town center, I don't know if you can see this or not, is light shaded, which shows you have some very large buildings, and also over here in the industrial park, that are prime examples for solar panel installation. So if you were to begin the process of doing solar panel installation, you could have or see a potential emissions reduction of 47,200 passenger cars, or 5.7 million trees grown for the next 10 years. Then they go so far as to estimate your solar installation potential. They talk about the number of roofs. Roof space is 2.17 million square feet, and they also give you a calculation of the number of megawatts that you could produce. And yes, you can have solar panels in the Pacific Northwest. What's so interesting about this, if you delve into the details, they go onto each person's roof, take out all the upper, the chimneys and all that kind of stuff, the accessory material on a roof for each individual structure to make this calculation, and then determine how many solar panels you can put on that roof. That's the level of detail that's in here. It's quite amazing. And like I say, you're seeing the first implementation of machine learning in the city of Lakewood involving land use planning. And when Google gets attached or gets access to the assessor's data, which is at some point going to happen, then you're really going to be able to do a lot of analysis. So the next slide is just basically Spock saying, fascinating. So these are our findings. We can provide leadership and engagement if we want. We can actively regulate land uses to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Let's look for ways to improve active modes of travel. A big issue is protecting the natural environment and preparing for climate change by reducing greenhouse gas impacts and planning for long-term sustainability. I didn't have time to talk about it in this presentation, but the report also looked at carbon sequestration, which is the amount of carbon that is stored in your parks and your open space areas. I think there's a significant amount of carbon sequestration in Lakewood that could probably reduce your total carbon footprint by about 20%. But that requires some additional work and studies, and I don't have a capacity in my department to do it. But I've had some conversations with Department of Commerce as they continue to talk about climate change. This is going to be a topic that Lakewood will likely make application for a grant at some future date. And I think the real carbon is found in the Flett Creek complex, given the amount of wetland material that's in there. Some additional goals, providing leadership, increasing use of energy efficient vehicles, developing energy efficient systems, encouraging sustainability, and developing updated hazard management plan. And we've sort of been in the process on that last one already. I just wanted to show this slide that climate change impacts are already present. You see some of the fire smoke over Tacoma and also Seattle this past year. In the middle, you see a slide with increased algae. I've provided a picture, an aerial photograph of Walhop Lake, and in the upper corner, you see the tanks that are used to help deal with some of the issues in the lake. I suspect you're going to see more of this, particularly if the climate continues to rise as far as temperature. The two pictures here and here, this is the Nisqually River and the basically the basin. Unbeknownst to everyone, this is kind of a little side story. SSMCP, the South Sound Military Communities Partnership, has been looking for ways to improve transportation from basically DuPont to Tumwater. One of the big issues has been the bridge, the I-5 bridge across the Nisqually River. And we've been talking about increasing more lanes and how the Nisqually Indian tribe would respond and what would be the environmental concerns. And then that led to a whole series of other questions. And one of the things that we have found is because of the reduction in the glaciers in the mountains, you're seeing more erosion occurring in the river itself. As a result of the erosion, you're seeing more silt. And then I-5 itself acts as a dam that holds back the silt. And as a result of those factors, there's a transitional zone where salmon need a specific type of water to be able to transition their kidneys from fresh water to salt water. Well, that zone is getting increasingly smaller and smaller each year. So as a result of these impacts, you're seeing less and less salmon in the Nisqually Delta, and it's also having its own effects in the Puget Sound with other wildlife. So we've been studying this at great length, and we've been asking for some additional money from the Washington State Legislature. We received another $5 million for 2021 to continue our studies, the process of which is to basically rebuild I-5. That would be at a cost on the high side of $4.2 billion. You'll see a little heading up above, the Nisqually Delta and I-5 are in jeopardy, and that's true. And you'll see these little numbers, 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's where the I-5 will break or will be flooded. And that's 10 to 15 years out. So it is time to start thinking about this seriously, not only from a transportation perspective, but also from an environmental perspective. And this is a good example about what happens in situations with climate change. It's things you didn't anticipate or expect that kind of come back and bite you. So we're having to address it. I really give a great deal of credit to SSMCP and the Nisqually tribe for looking at this and being ready to talk about it. We are getting interest in the legislature. More to follow on this in future years. We also have a problem, inundation of flooding. This is in the Springbrook neighborhood. Basically, everything in blue is potentially going to get flooded in a 100-year flood. And you'll notice that a whole section of I-5 between Bridgeport Way and 512 is potentially subject to flood. The other issue that we have is right down here. There's a barrier, a soil barrier. There are some concerns that if that were to break, it would also flood into other areas south of Clover Creek. Mr. Busich is studying these issues right now. He's trying to arrange for a stakeholder group, not only with city officials, but with the neighborhood, but also with Department of Transportation to start talking about this and how we're going to resolve it. This is a long-standing issue. And basically what you're seeing here is this is where Clover Creek actually stopped and sort of it continued to go this way. but in this area, there was like a small braided stream where it would come out and provide water or store water in this location. If you go back to some aerial photographs in 1945, you see that. But again, the creek wants to go to its original destination, which is to the north, not to the west. It would like to go towards Clover Park High School and then feed into the town center. And then my last slide is basically questions. And I thought this cartoon was worthwhile. I used to agree with you that climate change was real until I found out how much it would cost to fix it. And that's what we're beginning to see on the periphery with some of the work that we're doing. Right now, the Planning Commission is going through the implementation policies, trying to refine them. This goes to the City Council for their discussion sometime in late May or June. And we'll see where this goes. I do think that the implementation measures will be pared down and that we will look for very specific things to do where we can accomplish goals and do some things. I'm very concerned about whatever we come up with matches the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board goals and policies. And I do see some opportunities for grants and the like that we would like to explore at a future date. So anyway, that's my 19 slides, and I am happy to answer any questions that you might have. And I may not know the answers.
Dave, impressive presentation. Thank you for sharing that with us tonight. Again, I want to give you kudos for the creativity of you, your staff, and the City Council to come up with Google and get that kind of good information. That's impressive. And yeah, I'm going to take you up on your recommendation and try to enlist that for Federal Way. But it's very sobering at the end and things that we're going to have to deal with. But it's better if you can look them, square in the eye and face off with it and get a plan. And that's what you and the City of Lakewood are doing. And so as a citizen and as a Parks Board member, I appreciate that. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
Dave, is this presentation available anywhere?
Yeah, it's a public document. I put it together last week for Mary,
Okay.
but anyone who wants to use it can. It's very sobering.
Parks Board?
If it's small enough, or if we can reduce the size, we could send it out to the group, and that way they would get it in its full form, or we could make it a PDF.
That'd be great, Mary.
Dave, I missed it. What was the length of time from the time you first asked Google to the time that you got the results back?
About 5 months.
Okay.
The thing about this is that they'll do the work, but they won't release it until you tell them to. And so I told them they could release it in mid-April. And there's a special way to go. It's called Google EIE. And you have to really search for it. It's not that easy to find. And then there's some password issues you have to go through. I figured it all out. I'm not the most computer literate, but if I can do it, others can. I will also tell you that Pierce Transit, when they heard about this, flipped. They have been having some discussions about asking Google to do this for their entire service area. So this is beginning to catch on. I did have a meeting with Department of Commerce this morning. They're very curious about this. They may, in fact, contact Google and say, can you do this for the entire Puget Sound? So I don't know what's going on. It's we're I think we're the first city in Washington to do this, okay? And if it catches on and other people use it, and that's great. But you're also only getting a small glimpse of the entire software in the system here, because I could spend a whole evening just on the technical aspects of what they've created. I've chosen not to do this because it's just introductory at this stage.
David, that's such great information. They probably thought you were Lakewood, California. That's probably why they started.
I will also tell you that I've been also promoting this whole thing with the News Tribune. We have a meeting with them on Thursday. I'm asking them, it's time to do a big story on this. and do it over a couple of Sunday newspapers, because there's enough information here. It's very sobering, and I think it really wake up people's minds. We made a similar presentation to the Washington Transportation Commission last week. They were shocked. So it's out there if you look for it.
I think it's fantastic, and it's great to see that they're highlighting so much solar potential. I've always believed that there's a lot more potential here in Washington than we take advantage of.
Mhm.
One of the things that I'm trying to do, and I haven't been able to do it because the infrastructure is so expensive, but can we come up with ways to incentivize this so that people will do it without having being told to do it? Because I'm really frankly tired of the state of Washington coming in and saying, you shall do this and you shall do that. I would prefer that we find a way where people of common minds can figure this out. And we haven't gotten there yet. And I think part of the problem has to do with it's so expensive to recapitalize everything that you're working on. And not everybody agrees. And this is expensive. It's not cheap.
Dave, is some of the strategies that you have supported here or that may be implemented in future comprehensive plans or such, is that to just slow it down, or could some of that reverse some of the potential models that have been done for regarding, flooding or damage?
Well, one of the things that's easy to do is, if you stop growing within the region, you will substantially reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. But nobody wants to talk about that. Here you have PSRC saying that for Vision 2050, Lakewood needs to come up with a population close to 86,000 people. Well, that's just going to generate more greenhouse gas emissions. So is that really, really reasonable? It seems like we have a whole series of competing interests here, and no one's really been able to figure it out. If you really want to do greenhouse gas emissions, a very simple way is to reduce the population and not have a strong economy.
Well, and there's differences in how you, in order to take growth into account, you have to start thinking about what's your metric? Is it greenhouse? If you distill it down to greenhouse gas per person in the population, then it's a usable measurement that no matter what the population changes to, you can start to measure it accurately over time.
Yeah, one of the things in the report, I didn't mention it here, is that if you commute from Lakewood to Seattle every day over a month, you will place 1,000 pounds of greenhouse gas emissions into the air. That's what that means. So if you can get businesses to relocate to where the population centers are, you've had a marked improvement in reducing VMT. But so how do you get businesses to do that?
Do you think that they'll look at, I know that you gathered this information, but like COVID, with so many people working remotely, that's changed the transportation that people have at least done in the last year or so. And I know that there was some studies regarding like how the pollution and greenhouse gases and such, like in China or some of these industrialized factory areas, were so reduced when people were shutting down for a month or two. And so, how that measurement compares. And I know it's not going to show a long-term effect currently, but, just those were just really, it was easy to show, look what you can do if you change the way you do things, right? Whether you just do it or you change the way.
Right now, we have a number for 2019. We're going to do this again in 2020. And we'll take a look at how COVID impacted greenhouse gas emissions and then see what the end result was. Some other cities are doing some very, I'm going to call them, making some very difficult decisions that a lot of people don't like. One of them is one city in Petaluma said, we're no longer going to approve gas stations and convenience stores. So you can't sell gasoline in our city anymore. Another city, and you've seen this a little bit with Tacoma, they're now banning natural gas. So new construction can only have electricity. Now, PSC and I have had some discussions about that. We do use natural gas for about a third of the city. Actually, PSC is coming up with a new technology that they can use natural gas and not create greenhouse gas emissions. So we have to be careful about what we are going to impose. Another great example is the state went ahead and required new standards for conservation for residential construction. For remodels and additions, we don't have any for single family residential units in Lakewood right now because they've made it so expensive, or they can't figure out the math that nobody's coming in with permits. Because if you go ahead and do a remodel to an older home, where before you may not have been required to put in new HVAC system, now you have to. You may also be required to put in additional equipment, including a heat pump. All those good things, yes, but can you really amortize it out over a period of time? And so those are big questions. And so in Lakewood, we're beginning to run into some situations where we're beginning to see bootlegged additions and remodels. Do we take action on it? Or do we let it go to some extent? Because whatever is being built in some regards is better than some of these older homes. So this has been a real tough one for the building division. And I just wish that the state would be a little bit more cognizant of the economic impacts that they have upon communities when they pass these rules and regulations without thinking it through. That's an editorial comment, okay?
Comes from logic, Dave. It makes sense to me.
I think it sounds like I'm excited to see more information about it. I know we're getting ready to do update our sustainability plan at work as well, and so it's been on my mind a lot lately. So I think thank you for showing us this. This was wonderful.
Thank you for listening to me.
Dave, it'll be great to hear the city council's concerns and comments back afterwards, after the presentation.
I have no idea where the council is on
Yeah.
any of this. I think I've gone maybe a little too far and stretched things, and they can reel me back in, that's fine. But I would prefer to give them everything and then
Sure.
let them determine what it is they don't want to do or do want to do. And there's significant budget implications throughout all of this.
Mhm.
And I know the city manager has some concerns.
David, when would you get the next update? I know you probably got the original one based on when you had it released. So will you get the next update in April of next year, or is it like January through December? What's the time frame?
My proposal would be to contact Google again about November and request another analysis. But depending on what Department of Commerce does, they could be contacting Google and saying, we want to use your services. And so Department of Commerce does it for all the cities. That to me makes the most sense. And it's great for Google.
Yeah. I was just thinking it would be great to have you on our calendar for next May or June to give us an update to see that, you'll have the compare and contrast, or maybe some new analytics or new summaries to be able to show that work. So
yeah, Google is constantly updating the information. I will also tell you that I think the emissions amounts are a little on the high side because they used a mix of 50% electricity and 50% fuel. Our mix is probably closer to 75-25. So it's a little on the high side, but for a first round, that's not too bad. The problem that I'm having too is this has been a personal assignment. We're so busy that nobody has time to do this. So this whole thing has been written on the weekends and on evening hours, as you know, Mary.
yeah.
And there's a lot we should be doing. I just don't have the time to do it.
Your efforts surely show, Dave, and
Yeah.
I think we're all thankful on the board.
Okay.
Any other questions for Dave?
Thank
Hearing
you.
none. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate your time.
Thank
Great
you.
report.
Thank you.
You sobered me up pretty good though, Dave.
Good night.
Good night. So it looks like Mary's up next, and she's got a director's report for us. Hopefully you can bring the mood back for us and get us out of this doom and gloom.
Yeah.
You're on mute though, just so you know, Mary.
Thank you. That's like again, you can never keep me quiet, and so it's funny when people say that. Okay, so can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. Oops, I'll go to the front. So I just want to give you a quick update on here's my director's report, and then I have a couple other things to share that are just recent. So just to give you some updates on our capital projects, we've got a lot going on. They're all at various stages. So you reviewed the Springbrook Park Master Plan, and we are reviewing that with council on May 10th. The only real difference, I think, from when you reviewed it was we initially had proposed the dog park across the creek, that area that's going to be flooded that Dave just showed us. So we did some preliminary environmental review, and they said no, heck no. So we're putting that back over on the other side behind the garden, kind of in the original place where it was planned for. So that's the only real change. And we'll be talking to council on May 10th and then starting the permitting with, again, anticipated construction starting in September after the summer season. So we don't impact the use of that space for families in the summer. The gateways are still at about 60%. You can see if you've been out by Tillicum or Woodbrook on the freeway and actually used that new figure 80, wow, how to get to Tillicum. There's two gateways. They're about 60%. The footings are done. The signs are being fabricated. So those should be getting put in. And it's really funny when you talked about 62,200,000 inbound trips to Lakewood, they're all going to go by a sign and say, hey, they're going to know they're in Lakewood. So that's cool. Chambers Creek Trail, we talked about that last month. We're working on the southern alignment, and I think we're back to the northern alignment. We just cannot find a way to get through that canyon unless we're way up high. And we do know that most of the residents did not want to have it near their backyard. And so that's really going to be a challenge. So we're back to looking at the north side. And there's a reason that this trail hasn't been built for 30 some years. And so we are, we're going to do our darndest to get a system and a design that works, and then figuring out phase 2. But phase 1 is going in. That's from Phillips Road across the bridge to Kobayashi. That's going to get started in July. It's been bid out. The bids have been approved, good low bid, and that should happen late July and probably get done through the end of August, early September. Harry Todd, we're almost done with that. We'll be installing the new playground in early June, and that should all be done by probably by the second week of June. The whole project will be done, so we'll open the park back up. Right now it's closed to the world. We're just finishing up Angle Lane. That's really pretty much done. We're really just working with the Nisqually projects. That's been a long time patiently waiting to work on. They're doing some benches and seating areas for us, hand carving them. It's really going to be cool when it's done. And then also developing kiosks so that we have some trail maps out there, and you are here and get people from here to there. The signage, we're going to be talking to council about that, but we anticipate starting to replace the park entry signs. And you all looked at that, I think last month, might have been the month before. I think it might have been, anyway, you guys saw them and you provided input on them. So Edgewater Park, right-of-way issues, working with council, working with a neighbor. His house is right smack in the middle of the corner right-of-way, so that's a work in progress. The appraisals are done for Wards Lake. As you know, we were going to buy those parcels on the backside of the theater. We have a Conservation Futures grant for that. The appraisal came in, and now we're going to be working with Dave's team on how to do a property lot line adjustment, boundary line adjustment, and then we'll be expanding the park. Talk to you a little bit about the development, next phase of that in a second. Fort Steilacoom Pavilion, almost done. I keep saying that, but really they're like laying drywall. It's going to be done hopefully by the end of May because we got stuff happening in there in the summer. Sealy Lake, you're going to get an update on that in a month or two, but we're working on finishing that master plan and preparing for phase one improvements. It'll be about $100,000 worth of improvements, and mainly just the entry area, some trail development, and a little bit of intake water, culvert work, and just to make it a little safer and easier. They've done a ton of work out there with limbing things up and moving things back. Service Club sign's almost up, again, being fabricated. American Lake Shelter's up. They'll be finishing the parking lot coming soon. They were waiting for, cleared up weather, but it'll be coated and then striped. And I think we're going to do the boat launch at the same time, since we have the crews out there and it's just efficient to work on that. And then our playground, All Abilities Playground, we're working on our third build date because we have to get a building permit and nobody provides calculations. So now we're working with engineers. We're on our fourth engineer. It might be our fifth engineer to try and get those calculations done so that we can get our building permit for this little teeny toddler area. The good news is that I'll just finish with capital. The city received resource. I think we're going to get every single grant we applied for. It's $2.7 million. And so we received all the grants. We scored high enough. Legislature approved the funding levels. So we're going to be making great improvements at primarily American Lake Park and Wards Lake Park. We'll be starting that work in late midsummer to start doing the design, final real design, not just master plan level, and permitting, and then get started on those. So that's exciting because those are some pretty big projects that will really make a difference for park experience. And then we got a little bit more money, the final piece to the puzzle for the turf projects. We'll be starting work on that probably end of the summer. And for the turf infields, and as you know, Pierce College will be building their home field on one of the fields. So that'll be another $1.6 million improvements out at Fort Steilacoom, really change that. And that'll be something that we can use when they're not using it for Pierce College baseball. We'll be able to use it for Lakewood baseball tournaments and things like that. So that's very exciting. And then in addition to the $2.7 million, we also will probably, we haven't heard back yet. Well, two things. We haven't heard back from the Legacy Project, which is a federal land and water conservation fund. So we know we're going to get at least $500,000. And if we are one of the selected projects, we may get $960,000. We can either take the 500 or the 960. We can't have both. I tried, and but we'll pick, of course, the highest one, and that'll just help us reduce our city match. So that's really super cool. And then there's a No Child Left Inside. We put together a grant program to do some special projects, probably starting in 2022. So we're going to test drive some of those this summer. So those are some exciting things happening. So we're thankful for that. Just continuing to work with Springbrook Park, that's a real partnership project. There's just such great neighborhood support for us in that area. They're really working on their community garden right now. And we've done the food bank goes there once a week. We just did a career and employment resource fair. We know with the individuals living in that neighborhood that face-to-face is really how we can communicate and provide resources for those individuals that live in that area. So we worked with all these partners and did a walk-through COVID-safe project and got information out to those folks. And what they wanted to do was to plant the seeds. They just did it in April. We're going to do it again in June because word passes that, it was a great event and we'll get more people out there with the idea that people know that if you want to reduce homelessness, you need to have livable job wages. And the only way you're going to get that is if you get trained to do those kinds of jobs. And so that's the point of getting these people enrolled in these various programs, whether it's through Clover Park or Pierce College or Goodwill Industries or other partnership projects, mentoring projects. So we're excited about that. And we've also done a free vaccine clinic out there. The city and the Clover Park School District approved the cooperative use agreement that we've worked on for all those months, and yay, we're all ready to move forward. Our community garden people were selected as the Pierce County Conservation District 2020 Program of the Year, and they were just for their hard work during COVID. They continued to keep the garden open, and they still generated food for the food bank, and so they were awarded that recognition, which is great. And we continue with our anniversary year. We did a story walk at both Fort St. Lucie and Springbrook Park. If you've been out there, you might have seen it in other areas. But it's the big red umbrella, and it's great. It goes right with our theme. And you walk along the path and you read the story. And it's in Spanish and English, so that's cool. And so you get to see the whole progression of the story through the park. So that's a nice family activity to do. And then just we're out and about doing all kinds of fun projects. And this is our schedule for next month. Just so you're ready, we'll do a Seeley Lake update. We'll give you a Springbrook Park update if we have one, but we've already, I think we did that, didn't we? Didn't we do that a couple months ago? Big master plan? But anyway, well, I think we did that already.
Yeah, we did it.
Yeah, I thought we did too. So anyway, we'll do a Seeley Lake update. We'll get ready for our joint meeting with council and whatever else has come up. Oh, I know what we're going to talk about next month. There is a program that we're working on right now. It's really exciting. Pierce County got a whole bunch of money to do youth recreation this summer. And they know they will absolutely not be able to spend that money in time. So they have partnered, they're going to partner with all of the Pierce County agencies or those of us that are able to partner with them. And it's an amazing program where we'll do our day camp programs, our free recreation programs, our summer, all kind of contract programs like with Skyhawks and Lego people, science people, and we'll be able to provide like 80% discounts for our programs. So it might be $100 program, you can come for $20. And then, but everybody's made whole, right? So the contractor's not going to lose money, the city's not going to lose money, but the participants will be able to do all these great programs at a very, very reduced cost. So it's really awesome. It's going to be a great summer. It's to get kids back out in the parks and get them safely playing and moving. And we're working really hard to pull it off. We'll be kicking it off the first part of May, but we'll be utilizing that for our summer program and really serving some of our underrepresented folks, taking the programs out to them too. So I'll give you more details on that because it's just coming to, but that's the base is really, you know, a $200 program, you can go for $20. That's pretty good. Pretty good for our community. So that's that. So be thinking about how we might want to integrate with council. Fred, this is new for you, but the council meets with all of our advisory boards once a year. We go over our work program and some of the topics that we've worked on. And then we also can engage with them with questions. We've done that where we're working on our master plan or we're working on our strategic plans, and we can ask them questions about, you know, what their thoughts are on policies or what's their thoughts on funding or, you know, climate change. I guess you could ask them about that when we meet with them. So anyway, we'll be thinking about that. We meet with them in June is when we're scheduled to meet with them. We usually meet in April, but we'll be meeting with them in June. So we'll be preparing for our meeting. Just a quick update here. You can see our farmers market's going to be starting in May. We're going to be doing our drive-in movies starting in June on 2 movies per month on Fridays at Fort St. Lucie Park. Concerts in the park will be starting. Again, we have ways we'll be able to manage whatever the guidance is. You know, we're back in phase 2. Hopefully we don't go to phase 1. Hopefully we can stay in phase 2, move to phase 3. But we know how to safely bring people together and make sure that they are safe and have good opportunities to recreate and gather and enjoy life. So that's what it's all about. So I think those are my 2 big things. Well, 12 big things, but
Yeah, a couple more than 2, Mary. Come on, give yourself a little credit here.
that's what's happening with us. So
Yeah, full plan as always. Looks fantastic, Mary. With that, we rolled any board member comments. Any board members have any comments for the good of the order?
I'd like to invite everybody Saturday to the wildlife area. We're having a community cleanup there. We've got 3 Rotaries, Kiwanis, a Lions group, the students from Pierce College, Scout Troop, and just the community at large. And we're just going to do a cleanup and do some more work out there to get that area even more user friendly. 9 to 1.
Ellen, do people need to bring anything? Gloves or wheelbarrows or tools?
Well, I'm still gonna steal the city's weed pullers because that's a perfect thing for social distancing with some of these younger ones who could pull Scotch broom all day. Weed whackers is the only thing we're really short on because we have a lot of that to do now. We're getting ready to restore the fence around the turtle ponds that are being studied because that whole area needs to be redone. And then get ready for that. We're going to do some weed whacking. And we have some new friends that have moved in there, a number of beavers who are really raising cane and cutting down every tree in the area. So there's going to be a beaver study occurring in that place about what the right number is.
Yep, we have beavers in Silicon. Some people think the right number is 0, and some people think the right number is 1 or 2. So
Yeah. So
I
of
like
course,
to
in
do
their
it.
ponds where they're trying to study these turtles, they're helpful in some places and they destroy it in others. So they've got to find a way to find a balance. So, a lot going on there, but we'd love to have you come out and join us on Saturday.
Yeah, they do a lot of damage quickly. I just had one thing to share, and so I was fortunate enough to, on all of your behalf, accept the Parks Appreciation Day proclamation last Monday night, and went great. Council's always very supportive of us. We thank them for that support. And also it was timed very nicely where the City Council is now honoring Eagle Scout candidates or Scout candidates that have completed their projects through that. And since we're kind of the approving board, it was really neat to be there on the first ceremony, and 3 Eagle Scouts got recognized by council and certificates. And so pretty neat to see it come full circle. So yep, they did what they said they were going to do when they saw us. So great job, you and your team, Mary.
Mary, I understand that an acquaintance of mine has contacted you about the flying field over there at the park, about people walking across with their dogs and stuff. And he bugs me every time I see him, and he tried to get a hold of Sylvia the other day. I don't know if he ever did or not, but he wanted to know where you lived because he wanted to come and talk to you. Would there be any value in putting up signs saying flying area, danger, stay out, or something like that? Would that solve the issue?
Well, it might solve some of the issue. Mr. Drysdale is, I've talked with him many times, and there's some things that he would like to see happen that probably won't happen. But I do agree that some additional signage, there is signage up, there's maps, but there could be better signage up, I think, on the far end, and maybe even some flags or something to draw people's attention. Because there is a definite end to the fly zone, and then people do walk around and go to the dog park or to the trails. I mean, it's a connection from Elwood. So I do agree we could put some extra signage out there or awareness for people that they're going into this area. So that would be helpful.
Okay, because he said there were some kids that were having a picnic in the middle of the airfield here a couple of weeks ago or something like that. And so,
Right. Well, and in all fairness to folks, there's 350 acres, and people just find a plot of land that they sit on and have. And if you went over there for like Truck and Tractor Day and you were chucking pumpkins, you might think, oh, this is a great place to sit down and have a picnic, not really knowing it's the RC area until someone shows up and says, hey, you're sitting in my fly zone. So, so people, we see people flying kites on the backside of baseball games and, things like that. So we try and share the space as best we can, but also we need to manage it so it's safe. So, I think some additional signage would be helpful, and we're working on that.
So I'm going to tell you a quick story, no names mentioned, but somebody was out there flying and their plane was behind a tree and they lost sight of it. They never found it. He went home and it landed on a boathouse on Lake Steilacoom. It had his phone number on it. And they called him and said, are you so, we have your plane.
Yeah.
So, and some of those things go like 90,000 miles an hour. And I tell you, it's,
they're really heavy and they can be dangerous. I was
absolutely.
in the bathroom and we were doing an inspection, and this plane came flying by, and I looked and it hit the roof. It hurt it because it hit the roof of a barn. It sounded like a plane crashed, and it did. And it almost hit 2 people, and I knew the person, so I totally walked them off the ledge, but it would have killed them. Yeah. I mean, seriously, this person was way out of boundaries and lost control, and that's what happened. So, we provide that area for folks, and we hope that they stay within it. But I got to tell you, they sometimes fly out of it. So on or off their own.
Yeah, and you know, we're really, Lakewood residents are pretty fortunate that we've got a fly zone. You know,
Yeah.
in federal way, our park code says by director's authorization or an authorized area. Well, we don't have any authorized areas, and it's very rare that we're gonna special event permit something like that. Generally, it's for Boy Scouts and a rocket launch or something
Right.
more organized. But just because of those mishaps is our reluctance to set up one of those areas. So everyone, you know, needs to use it responsibly and be grateful for what we have.
Mhm. Thanks, Mike.
Any other board member comments? All right, hearing none, I would entertain, oh, well, we'll meet next Tuesday, May 25th, 5:30. I'm assuming it'll still be on Zoom. Vaccinations are available. Try to get them if you haven't. And with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I made the motion.
Okay, Sylvia.
I'll second.
Second.
All right, Alan, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, hearing none. Thank you all. Great meeting. Have a good evening.
Thank you.